ॐ स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः। असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Let us offer our salutations to Sri Ramakrishna, the embodiment of all religions, the Supreme God incarnate. Let us pray to Him to lead us from the unreal to the real, to lead us from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge, to lead us from death to immortality. Today's topic, I am speaking on what the world needs today. So the great teachers come to this world frequently in order to lead us in a proper way. And in modern times, Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Sharda Devi and Swami Vivekananda have come to show us the way how we should conduct ourselves in the life. So they have shown through their own life what exactly we need today. Swami Vivekananda has made it very clear that we should have good intellect with powerful reasoning and also very compassionate heart. That's what we need. Both of them are important. Intellect as well as heart. Swami Vivekananda used to say, we need the intellect of Shankaracharya and we need the heart of Lord Buddha. That's the combination. So the modern person should be educated in such a way that he should develop good reasoning intellect and also compassionate heart. So the combined legacy of the two great architects of Indian thought and culture, Buddha and Shankaracharya, has influenced the philosophy of Swami Vivekananda very profoundly. In Shankaracharya, he saw tremendous intellectual power, throwing the illuminating light of reason upon every experience. That's why Swami Vivekananda considered Shankaracharya's exposition of Vedanta scientific. In Buddha, on the other hand, Swami Vivekananda saw a great universal heart and infinite love, making religion practical and bringing it to everybody's door. It's a fact that Swami Vivekananda could not accept Buddha in toto. Buddha had appealed to the entire human race to accept the life of a beggar monk with a view to getting rid of the suffering in which the human race was involved. Vivekananda could not accept Buddha's emphasis on that particular point. In the philosophical thought that has emerged from Buddha's ethical teaching, there is no recognition of a soul. In Buddha's teaching of religion, there is no place for God. Swamiji could not agree with him on those matters also. In spite of his disagreement with Buddha in very many ways, Swami Vivekananda could not but show regard for his deep universal love for all living beings. Swami Vivekananda says, I do not endorse all his philosophy. I want a good deal of metaphysics for myself. I entirely differ in many respects, but because I differ, is that any reason why I should not see the beauty of the man? Bereft of all motive power, Buddha did not want to go to heaven. He did not want money. He gave up his throne along with everything else and went about begging his bread through the streets of India, preaching for the good of men and animals with a heart as wide as the ocean. Swami Vivekananda has said this in his complete works. The influence of these two great thinkers of ancient India can be found in the two divisions of Swami Vivekananda's philosophy. For his philosophy has two subdivisions. One of them may be termed Jnanakand and the other Karmakand. The two subdivisions taken together constitute the entire philosophy of Vivekananda. The philosophy of Vivekananda that has emerged from Jnanakand is exactly the same as the Advaita Vedanta of Shankaracharya. Sri Ramakrishna realized the Vedantic truth that the divine is in all beings and all paths ultimately lead to the divine, and handed down this truth to his favorite disciple Swami Vivekananda. The disciple, deriving his inspiration from the master, tried to give a new shape to Vedanta. According to Vivekananda, the different schools of the Vedanta are not antagonistic to one another, but stages in the final spiritual fulfillment. The philosophical positions of Dvaita, Vishishtadvaita and Advaita, were to him not absolute systems but stages in spiritual growth. To quote Swami Vivekananda, in these three systems we find the gradual working up of the human mind towards higher and higher ideals, till everything is merged in that wonderful unity which is reached in the Advaita system. By solid reasoning, Shankaracharya extracted from the Vedas the truth of the Advaita Vedanta, and on it built up the wonderful system of Jnana, expounded in his commentaries. He unified all the conflicting descriptions of Brahman and showed that there is only one infinite reality. The Advaita Vedanta of Shankaracharya is popularly known as Mayavada. In Jnanakanda section of Swami Vivekananda's philosophy, we find expounded and exemplified this same Mayavada. In fact, Swami Vivekananda may be said to be a modern exponent of this doctrine. According to Swami Vivekananda, Maya is a statement of the fact of this universe, of how it is going on. It is not a theory, but a statement of fact. Shankara points out that there is only one reality, and that reality is Brahman. But on account of Maya, the world appears to be different from Brahman. Swamiji has beautifully summed up the fundamental truth of Advaita Vedanta. He says, there is but one, the free, the knower, self, without a name, without a form or stain. In him he is Maya, dreaming all this dream. There is only one reality, and that reality is Brahman or Atman. It is without name, form or stain. The world of multiplicity, which appears to us, is a product of Maya. In truth, it doesn't exist. But as long as we are circumscribed by this material existence, we are bound to see this illusion. The root cause of this illusion is in Brahman, which is the one and only reality. Swami Vivekananda accepted these basic ideas of Advaita Vedanta. On the other hand, in the second part of his philosophy of life, in what we have called Karma Kanda, we find an altogether different view. Here we note a separate melody of Vivekananda. A Mayavadi sannyasi need not have any feeling for suffering human beings who are subjected to the illusion of ignorance. But in Swamiji's philosophy, we find that the bright sun of intellectuality of Shankara has combined with the heart of Buddha, the wonderful infinite heart of love and mercy. It is really a wonder to see that in Vivekananda's philosophy, these two conflicting faculties of Shankara and Buddha meet and mingle. The question naturally arises, how is it that the contradictions of the two great thinkers of ancient India got resolved in Vivekananda? We may say in reply that Swami Vivekananda wanted to satisfy the demands of both head and heart. It is because of this fact that he could not but show deep feeling for the entire human race, whom he, as an exponent of Shankara, regarded as belonging to the realm of Maya. The real philosophy of Vivekananda has emerged as a result of the synthesis of Mayavada of Shankara and the great humanism of Buddha. It would not be out of place to mention here that, like Vivekananda, Kant also could not but accept what his intellect refused to accept. His tremendous intellectual power did not allow him to accept any rational proof for the existence of God. But he could not at the same time deny the existence of God. In the Critic of Practical Reason, he pointed out that though we cannot have knowledge of God, we cannot but accept him as the upholder of justice for the vindication of our moral life. Like Kant, Vivekananda also had to satisfy the demands of both head and heart. His rational thinking convinced him that Brahman alone was reality and everything else was false. And yet Vivekananda could not help getting involved in relieving the miseries and problems of humanity. A vast sea of compassion flowed through his heart. He refused to be persuaded by its logic and plunged into the great mission of removing the distress of worldly men. Out of the synthesis of jnana and karma evolved what Swami Vivekananda called practical Vedanta. Practical Vedanta. That is what the world needs today. Its basic ideas are as follows. These diverse creations of God, these multi-natured human beings are but manifestations of the Supreme God. So we are bound by a divine family tie. Service of man is therefore the service of God. We come across this idea again and again in Swamiji's speeches and writings. The Supreme Lord alone exists from eternity to eternity. He is immanent in the husband, the wife. His immense power plays through his children. He lives in the sinful as much as in the good. He is in life and also in death. Out of this perspective emerges the concept that Brahman is immanent in everything in this phenomenal world. This awareness is identical with the deep perception that is embodied in the Upanishad. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. It is clearly mentioned in the Upanishad, everything is Brahman. Vivekananda had this great realization. He said, whatever is visible, whatever is audible, whatever you perceive, all these are his creation. In fact, they are the offshoots of that one soul. To be more precise, it is the Lord himself. Swami Vivekananda said this in Jnana Yoga. Man's dominant tendency is self-love. All his efforts are aimed at protecting his self-interest. It is solely through the expanding of his mental horizon that a man can outstrip the conflict of interest between the self and the non-self. Through this process, self-love can be sublimated. At the same time, it is also true that man's actions do not always tend towards self-interest. Even common men, at the exigency of circumstances, may act as if completely free from self-motivation. Self-abnegation for the sake of a friend is not a rare thing. Self-immolation for the sake of one's dear kinsman and complete renunciation of self-interest for a beloved one are not rare. Mother is a symbol of selfless love so far as her dear ones are concerned. So, even in every ordinary man, altruism finds full play. How can we reconcile these two tendencies in man, to be selfish and to be altruistic? The Upanishad says that the husband is dear to his wife, not because of the greatness of the husband, but because of the self. The mother's love for her children is not dependent upon the merit of her children, but on something else, the self that subsists in them. It is due to all embracing Atman that all things become endearing. Kinsmen, relations, friends, even ordinary human beings become dear because of the all-pervading Atman. It is just because of this that a man is guided by the instinct of love for his fellow beings. Vedanta philosophy of all denominations has this great common concept of the immanent divine self. This identity with the fellow beings is a motive force of love. It is this love that, based on the concept of the Supreme Self, that unites jnana and karma in Swami Vivekananda's philosophy. Even in day-to-day life, in spite of self-love, the ego or self increases its horizon. That single ego becomes twain through marriage, and after the birth of children, it becomes many. Thus, the self outgrows its ego nature. Finally, through higher spiritual experience, the entire world is encompassed by the liberated self. Gradually expanding, it transforms itself into the universal self and the source of perennial love, that sublime love which is God Himself. This identification of the individual self with the universal self, immanent in fellow beings, inspires the spirit of living for the universal good of mankind. It was this expansion of his self into the universal self that enabled Swami Vivekananda to combine in him the greatness of Shankara and Buddha. He says, we want today that bright sun of intellectuality of Shankara joined with the heart of Buddha, the wonderful infinite heart of love and mercy. This union will give us the highest philosophy. Science and religion will meet and shake hands. Poetry and philosophy will become friends. This will be the religion of the future. And if we can work it out, we may be sure that it will be for all times and peoples. Swamiji has said like this in his complete works, in his teachings. We can see how the persons who got the experience of Brahman, how they feel tremendously peaceful and happy and become a source of inspiration to everyone. There was a very great saint in India, his name Sadashiva Brahmendra, a very great saint who practiced non-dualism and got the realization of the Supreme Self even while living. What Shankaracharya says, Jivan Mukta, to get liberation while living. So, this saint is the author of Brahma Sutra Vritti and Atma Vidya Vilas and various other books. Of course, he has performed innumerable siddhis in his life. Once when he was absorbed in samadhi on the banks of the great river Kaveri, this saint was carried away by the flood and thrown somewhere else. He was deeply buried underneath the sand. Peasants went to plough the fields. They hit against the head of the yogi and some blood oozed out. They dug out, and to their great astonishment they found the yogi seated in samadhi. This is Sadashiva Brahmendra, the great saint. On another occasion, as an Avadhut, he entered the tent of a Muslim chief. He was a Paramahamsa, so he was not aware of his dress, etc. In a way, he was naked, but the chief was quite enraged at the sage. He did not know the greatness of this saint. So what he did was he cut off one of his arms. Sadashiva Brahmendra walked away without uttering a word and without showing any sign of pain. The chief was greatly astonished at this strange condition of the sage. He thought that this man must be a Mahatma, a great man. He repented much and followed the sage to apologize. Sadashiva did not even know that his arm was cut off. When the chief narrated to the sage what had happened in the camp, Sadashiva excused the chief and simply touched his maimed arm, and he had a fresh arm. These incidents in the life of this great sage should convince everyone that there is a sublime divine life independent of objects and the play of the mind and the senses. So these saints and sages are the living inspirations for us how to live our life in a way conducive to spiritual growth and fulfillment. The sage was quite unconscious of the world. He did not feel a bit when his arm was cut off. He ought to have been absorbed in the divine consciousness and become one with the divine. Ordinary people yell out even when there is a pinprick on their body. The above incidents in the life of Sadashiva Brahma amply prove the existence of God and a divine eternal life, where all sorrows melt, all desires are satisfied, and where one gets supreme bliss, peace and knowledge. And it's really very important to come across such saints of great experience. And we have many saints and sages through their exemplary life have shown us the spiritual path and a source of great inspiration, and really they show us in what way we should proceed in the life. There was an interesting dialogue between an agnostic and a spiritually illumined person. It is very interesting to note how finally, by being in contact with this illumined person, the agnostic was transformed and finally believed in the existence of God and the divine play. The agnostic asked the question, "Sir, please show me your God or Brahman of whom you speak very highly every day. If God really exists, I should see him with my own eyes now." The illumined person answered, "I will beat you now with this stick. Please show me your pain in concrete form." Agnostic said, "How can I show you my pain, sir? Your question is quite absurd. One will have to feel the pain oneself." The illumined person answered, "Similar is the case with God also. You will have to realize him through constant and intense meditation. He can't be seen by these fleshy eyes, as he is beyond the reach of the senses and the mind. In fact, if you have studied Bhagavad Gita, when Lord Krishna showed his divine cosmic form, he granted special vision to Arjuna. Otherwise, with ordinary eyes, he could not have seen the universal form of God. Then the agnostic asks again, if God is beyond the reach of the senses, then he should be a non-entity, a mere void, a negative concept, a metaphysical abstraction, I do not wish to attain such a negative state of nothingness. I will not gain anything but attaining Him. I will not get anything by attaining Him. I am very happy here when I enjoy the different kinds of sensual objects. There is nothing beyond these sensual pleasures. Why do you talk of something beyond the senses? How could this be? I can't believe such things. I am a scientist. I want accurate laboratory proofs. Everybody wants to behave like a scientist. Anyway, the illumined person answered, well, you want laboratory proofs. Very good. You wish to limit the illimitable, all-pervading God in our test tube, blowpipe and chemicals? God is a source for your chemicals. He is a substratum for your atoms, electrons and molecules. Without Him, no atom or electron will move. He is the inner ruler, Antaryamin. He is the Niyanta, controller. Without Him, the fire cannot burn, the sun cannot shine, the air cannot move. Without Him, you can't see, can't walk, can't hear, can't think. He is the maker of all scientific laws, the law of gravitation, the law of cohesion, the law of attraction and repulsion, etc. He is lawgiver. Bow to Him with faith and devotion. You will have a thorough knowledge of the science of sciences, Brahma Vidya, through His grace, and attain moksha, liberation. An agnostic said, is there anything like the science of sciences? I had my education at Oxford and Harvard universities. I never heard there of a science like this. The illumined person answered, just note the conversation that took place between Shaunaka and Angiras. Shaunaka, the great Grihastha, questioned Angiras, Kasmin bhagavo vijñāte sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati. What is that which being known all this become known? The great Angiras replied, it is Brahma Vidya, the science of sciences, by knowing which the immortal Brahman is realized. By knowledge of Brahma Vidya, or the science of sciences, you hear what cannot be heard. You perceive what cannot be perceived. You know what cannot be known. You think what cannot be thought of. Just as by the knowledge of a single nugget of gold, all that is made of gold is known, the difference being only a name arising from speech, but the truth being that all is gold. Just as by the knowledge of a single pair of nail scissors, all that is made of iron is known, all modifications being only a name based upon words, but the truth being that all is iron. Thus is the Brahma Vidya, or the science of sciences. The basis for all these secular sciences is Brahma Vidya, or Adhyatmic science. If you know this supreme science through direct intuition, you will have knowledge of all other worldly sciences, just as you will have knowledge of articles made of clay if you have knowledge of clay itself. You can't learn this science of sciences in any university. You will have to learn this from a Brahma Srauti, Brahmanishta Guru, after controlling your senses and the mind. The agnostic said, how can I believe that God exists when I can't see Him actually with my eyes? The illumined person said, though you do not see the stars in the daytime, yet they do exist. Though you can't see the sun during a cloudy day, yet it does exist. Even so, though you can't see God with these physical eyes, yet He does exist. If you get the divine eye, or the eye of intuition, Jnana Chakshus, by the practice of meditation, you will see Him. Then the agnostic said, I think that there is No such thing as God or immortal soul or divine eyes or eternal bliss of the soul. It's all the wild imaginations of the so-called Vedantins and devotees. Just as red color is produced by the combination of lime, nut and bitter leaves, so also this body is formed by the combination of the five elements. This body only is the soul. There is nothing beyond this body. There is nothing beyond sensual enjoyments. The philosophy of flesh or the philosophy of Virochana, eat, drink and be merry, appeals to me most. We should extract as much pleasure as possible from this body and the sensual objects. There is no use in practicing penance or self-restraint. We should allow the senses to run riot out of a free play with the sensual objects. This is the only wisdom. Fasting, observing silence, celibacy, meditation, etc. are all foolish acts of an ignorant man. He was very outspoken in his feelings. Then the illumined person answered him, these worldly objects are ephemeral. They wear out the vigor of all senses. Even the longest life is very short. No man can be made permanently happy by wealth, children, and other comforts. Man weeps in old age. He is drowned in sorrow when he loses money, when his wife or son dies, when he develops incurable disease. Nachiketas, a great brahmacharin of the Upanishads, he was not tempted by the worldly gifts of Lord Yama. He persisted in attaining the eternal bliss of the immortal soul and got it through the instructions of Lord Yama. A passionate, ignorant man who has neither discrimination nor dispassion, who is drowned in worldliness, cannot have a clear conception of the Supreme Tattva. Then the agnostic said, Sir, nature only does everything. Why should we accept the existence of God? Nature nourishes. Nature is everything. This world can go on without an Ishvara or Lord. Nature can manage everything. The illumined person answered, nature is not independent. She is a handmaid of the Lord of nature. Nature is his Shakti or illusory power. Just as clay is to the potter, so is nature to the Lord. The Lord gazes at Prakriti or nature. He is the premium mobile. He sets the Prakriti in motion. Then the Prakriti starts her activities. Just as heat is inseparable from the fire, so also Shakti is inseparable from the Lord. Just as the power of burning is inherent in fire, so also Shakti is inherent in the Lord. Then the agnostic asked, what are the chief attributes of your Lord? Then the illumined person answered, God is omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent, and all merciful. Agnostic asked, can he make a two-sided paper only one-sided? Can he make a man jump on his own shoulders? Can he make the fire burn downwards? Can he make the sun radiate coolness? Can he make a barren woman's son father of 7 children? If he cannot do these things, he is no longer the omnipotent Lord. The illumined person answered him, don't ask such impertinent, useless and meaningless questions. Spiritual minded person will never talk a word in vain. You are wasting your life, time and energy. God is omnipotent. He can do and undo things in the twinkling of an eye. His grace makes the dumb man eloquent and the cripple a mountaineer. Develop Shraddha and Bhakti. Utilize your body in his service. It's very difficult to get a human birth. Therefore, try your best to realize truth in this birth itself. Try to become wise. Learn to discriminate. Cultivate your heart. Make it soft and pure. Then again agnostic asked, Sir, you say God is all merciful. I say God is not so. He is very unjust. He makes some very rich, others very poor, some healthy, and others very sickly and deformed from their very birth. The illumined person answered him, God is quite just. He is the silent witness. This world runs in accordance with different laws. There is order. Virtue brings its own reward. Vice brings its own punishment. God neither punishes nor rewards any individual. Man reaps the fruits of his own actions. As he sows, so he reaps. The law of cause and effect operates. This law is inexorable. Agnostics again ask, why God created this world? When he is Purnakama, there is one in whom all desires are gratified, how did the desire to create this world arise in his mind? The illumined person answered, why God created this world? When did karma begin? Why should there be ignorance at all? When did man take his first birth? How can ignorance come in the Atma who is of the nature of Satchidananda, which is more powerful, whether prarabdha, destiny, or purushartha, self-effort? And many such other questions are transcendental questions. Such questions do not help in any way one's progress in the spiritual path. The result is mere lingual warfare and beating about the bush with no substantial result. Words are finite, language is imperfect. One can get a solution to such questions only when one transcends the three states and the three gunas and rests in one's own essential swarupa through constant and protracted nididhyasan and at times dridabhumi or yoga rudha, that is established in yoga. That state, one should establish in that yoga state. The frail, finite intellect that is conditioned in time, space and causation cannot peep into the beyond. You will get answers for these questions only when you get knowledge of the self. All doubts are rent asunder. The three knots are broken when one attains Brahmic sthiti or Sahajavastha, natural state, or the divine state of pristine purity and glory. People generally rack their brains and waste their energy when such doubts assail them. This is a trick of the mind to delude the aspirant and swerve them from the path of divine contemplation. What is wanted is rigorous sadhana, burning dispassion, strong desire for liberation, and sustained discrimination. Agnostic asked again, if God is all merciful, if he is an ocean of mercy, why should there be pain and disease in this world? Illumined person answered him, pain is in a way a good thing in this world. It is an eye-opener. It is a blessing in disguise. It infuses mercy in your heart and turns your mind towards God. It develops your willpower or power of endurance. It forces you to find out the way of escape from the clutches of Maya or the thraldom of matter. And again agnostic asked, why should there be evil in this world? Can he not create a world with pure bliss only? Why should there be mixture of pleasure and pain? Does this not go against his omnipotent nature? The illumined person answered, this universe is a mixture of good and evil. This is a relative plane. You can't expect pure unalloyed happiness here. You can find pure bliss in your innermost self or Brahman only. Evil is not a distinct entity. Good and evil are the upwards and reverse sides of the same coin. Evil exists to glorify good. What is evil at one time is good at another time. What is evil for one is good for another. A rogue is a saint of this future. If you keep him in the company of a saint, he will become a veritable Mahatma. Have you not studied the life of Ratnakar, Jagai and Madai? They became very good saints when they came in contact with great souls. The body of a man is the result of good and evil actions. Therefore, he should reap the fruits of his good and evil actions, namely pleasure and pain. The agnostic said, "Well, my mind is slightly turned towards your side by your impressive instructions. Please give me some strong proofs for the existence of God. I am led to believe now that supreme intelligence or power governs this universe." The element person again answered him, "God or Brahman is Swatasiddha, that is self-proved. The self is the basis of the action of proving. Therefore, it is evident before the action of proving itself. It is therefore impossible to deny it. In denying the existence of Brahman, you deny your own existence, which is absurd. Brahman is the basis of all presuppositions, demonstrations, and all notions." And again agnostic asked, "I have understood this point well. Doubtless this self cannot be demonstrated, but it is possible to infer its existence from certain empirical facts. Please furnish me with those facts, then I will have perfect conviction." And the illumined person answered, "The existence of Brahman is known on the ground of its being the self of everyone, because everyone is conscious of the existence of the self. There is an inherent feeling in every body. I exist. Aham asmi. Man never thinks I am not. This self of whose existence all are conscious is Brahman." Agnostic said, "Well, I can understand this. Imagine for a moment that you are dead." Agnostic said, "Yes, I have closed my eyes now. I now imagine that I am dead." Then the illumined person said, "What do you find now?" Agnostic answered, "I imagine that my dead body is lying down on the ground as a corpse, and I am witnessing the dead body." The illumined person said, "You can never imagine of your annihilation. You can never think that you do not exist after the physical body is thrown away. This itself clearly proves that you are always the witnessing subject, Sakshi." Agnostic said, "This also convinces me to some extent. Please give me some more practical illustrations." Illumined person said, "Here is a very practical illustration. You dream sometimes that you are dead and that your relatives are weeping. Even in that supposed death state, you see and hear them weeping. This clearly indicates that even after seeming death, life really persists. This also proves that immortality is an inherent attribute of the soul. You exist even after the physical sheet is thrown out. That existence is Brahman or Atma." Agnostic said, "This is really a wonderful illustration. My doubts about the existence of God or self are dwindling. Please give me some instructions from the experiences in daily life." The illumined person answered, "A certain lady had a fall from the third story of her house. Underneath, there is a bed of sharp angular stones. She would have received very serious injuries, but she was miraculously saved. She herself expressed, 'I actually felt the warm embrace of some invisible hands. Some mysterious power saved me.' Instances like this are not uncommon in daily life." The agnostic said, "Will you please tell me another illustration?" The illumined person said, "You find that even the world's best doctors fail to cure a dying king. You might also have heard of many instances where patients ailing from the worst type of diseases are cured miraculously, where even the ablest doctors have declared the case to be hopeless. This itself is a clear proof that there is a divine hand behind all cure. In fact, there is an instance in Sri Ramakrishna's life. Mathur Babu, who was a strong supporter of Sri Ramakrishna, who took care of Sri Ramakrishna in every respect, the son-in-law of Rani Rasmani, the founder of great Dakshineshwar Kali temple. Once it happened, Mathur Babu's wife fell sick. She got dysentery and it became serious. The best doctors of the Calcutta attended on her, but nobody could give relief to the patient. And finally the doctors said, well, it is not in our hands, probably she will leave the body within a few hours, because she was oozing out blood dysentery she had. So when the doctors had lost hope, Mathur Babu finally thought, well, let me go and see Sri Ramakrishna. So he ran from his home to Dakshineshwar Kali temple and fell at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna and pleaded to save his wife. The name of his wife was Jagadamba Dasi, his wife's name, the daughter of Rani Rasmani. He was pleading so much, so devotedly, and he was crying and weeping. When Sri Ramakrishna looked at him and said, well, if Divine Mother wills, she will be all right. Sri Ramakrishna would never say, he would never take any credit upon himself. Everything to Sri Ramakrishna was Divine Mother. So it is as if Divine Mother was telling through him. The moment Sri Ramakrishna said, if Mother wills, Mother willing, let me put it this way, Mother willing, she will be all right. That Mother is Sri Ramakrishna himself. The moment he said that, Mathur Babu jumped in joy, because he had tremendous faith in Sri Ramakrishna. And he concluded, when Sri Ramakrishna said this, it will become a fact. Even though the doctors have said she may not live a long time. So he ran with the same speed when he came to Sri Ramakrishna. He ran back to home and found that his wife was slowly showing recovery. In 1 week's time, she got fully recovered from the dreadful dysentery. And Sri Ramakrishna, referring to this incident later on, said to his disciples, because Jagadamba Dasi was cured of her blood dysentery, this body, referring to himself, Sri Ramakrishna said, had to suffer for 6 months out of stomach problem. That means somebody has to burn out. So what is suffering? Suffering comes to burn out the impurities, whatever the impurities we might have accumulated. Well, it became possible. So the divine hand can do anything. In fact, when Swami Vivekananda was in great mental stress, when his father suddenly passed away, and all the relations, they are all gone, they were not caring anymore, and it was so difficult even to get a morsel of food in the home. Many times Vivekananda would starve himself so that his share of the food may be taken by other members of the home. That was the worst condition. So he ran to Sri Ramakrishna, just as Mathur Babu ran to Sri Ramakrishna. He said, Master, please lose something. My home, we are suffering too much. And Sri Ramakrishna said, well, why are you asking me? Because you can pray to Divine Mother, and so that she can bless us to remove this terrible condition in our home. Then Sri Ramakrishna said, well, why do you want proxy? You can go directly to Mother. Everybody can go to Mother. Today is Tuesday, very auspicious day for the Mother. Go to the temple, ask her what you have asked me, same way you ask her. She will grant you whatever you want. See, the answer also Sri Ramakrishna is telling. She will grant you as if it is an accomplished fact. Then Vivekananda immediately ran to the temple. And Swami Vivekananda's mind, gold, free from all impurities, perfectly clean, stainless. And when he went inside the sanctum sanctorum, he saw the effulgent Divine Mother with a very kind look, smiling, welcoming him. And as soon as he entered there, Mother herself asked, well, my dear child, what do you want? And Swami was overwhelmed to see Mother's vision. And he immediately asked, Mother, what shall I ask? Please give me Jnana Bhakti Viveka Vairagya. Knowledge, devotion, discrimination, dispassion. Very good. You have all these things. Then he came back. Sri Ramakrishna was waiting. Well, did you ask the Mother the question which you asked me? Oh sir, I forgot. Then what did you ask? I asked for Jnana Bhakti Viveka Vairagya. Oh, I see. Go second time. Doesn't matter. Go again. And Sri Ramakrishna ordered him to go. He went again. Same thing repeated. When he stood before the Divine Mother, he could not ask anything else. He just said, please grant me Jnana Bhakti Viveka Vairagya. So 3 times happened the same way. And finally he came, well, I could not ask anything else but this. And Sri Ramakrishna himself tells, don't worry, the Divine Mother will provide your home the basic requirements. You don't have to worry anymore. So that means everything is in the hands of the Divine. So you must know how to propitiate the Divine, living a good moral life, following discipline, developing devotion and faith in the Divine existence, then everything will work out and you will be able to find out the meaning of all suffering. Thereby you learn and grow. So that is Divine way of teaching us. There are so many ways of teaching. One is through direct teaching. Another is through indirect teaching. So the illumined person answered this way. The agnostic again asked, can you illustrate this through the theory of karma? The illumined person answered, some people die when they are 8 years old. Some die when they are in the womb itself. Some die at 20, some at 40. What is the cause for the variation? Who has fixed the span of life for all? This clearly proves that there is a theory of karma, that there is one omniscient Lord who is the dispenser of the fruits of the actions of the embodied beings, who fixed the span of the life of the embodied beings in accordance with their nature of karma or action, who knows the exact relation between karmas and their fruits. As karma is jada or insentient, it certainly cannot dispense with the fruits of their actions. Then agnostic said, prove the existence of God through facts about this physical body which is regarded as a temple of God. The element person said, the insentient engine of a railway train cannot move without a qualified driver. Even so, this insentient body engine cannot move without an intelligent driver, who is God or Ishwar. From the existence of the body, you can infer the existence of the hidden driver of the body engine. Mark, there is display of intelligence in every inch of creation. Who pumps blood into the arteries? Who converts food into chyle and red colored blood? Who effects the peristalsis in the bowels and stomach and controls the process of assimilation and elimination? Who shuts the eyelids to prevent dust from falling into the delicate eyes? Who gave intelligence to the cells and glands to secrete milk, bile, saliva, gastric juice, etc. from the blood? Who gave intelligence and power to the spermatozoa to move, unite with the ovum in the womb and develop into a fetus? Wherefrom does this minutest, subtlest substance, jiva, as minute as the tiniest grain of sand, derive the capacity to assume gradually the features, complexion and shape of its parents? What's the power which sustains it and helps its growth in the mother's womb? Who arranges for milk in the mother's breast before the child is born? How wonderful is the human machine! How harmoniously all the organs work in unison in the economy of nature. In Bhagavad Gita, this body is known as Navadvarapuri, of 9-gate city. In summer, the skin works energetically to throw off all impurities of the blood and relieve the kidneys which had overworked in winter. The endocrine, pituitary, pineal, adrenal glands work in perfect harmony in manufacturing the internal secretions and the hormones to help the metabolic process of the body growth and structure. It is a great marvel to see the working of the nervous system under the control of brain and the improvement and the movement of the impulses through the spinal cord. There is a magnificent electric battery inside which switchboard and wires. It is with switchboard and wires. The operator is Antaryamin, the inner ruler, whom we call God, who controls and supervises everything. He is Upadrashta, supervisor. He is the permitter and the great Lord. Look at the heart and lungs which work under the direct control of the brain. How wonderful are these 3 vital organs, the tripods of life. Can an eminent scientist manufacture any of these organs, tissues, fibers, tendons or cells in his laboratory with his intellects? How harmoniously different systems such as the digestive system, circulatory system, nervous system, integumentary system work without any rest. How beautifully the different centers in the brain such as the vision center, authority center, center of smell, etc. do their functions. One is struck with awe and wonder when he begins to think seriously of the structure and working of this delicate human machinery. To think that this most wonderful mechanism is the result and product of a fortuitous combination of matter or atoms is simply absurd and ridiculous. It has been doubtless molded and fashioned by some architect who is infinitely more skillful, intelligent and powerful than the ordinary architects who build palaces and bungalows. That architect is God or Ishwar or Creator. Call him by any name, it doesn't matter much. So this way, the illumined person, through answering the questions of the agnostic, finally transformed him so that he could believe the existence of God and he could believe himself that he can work out, to make him understand that one has to work himself sincerely, honestly to achieve anything. So We must be surely developing our sharp intellect. The intellect should make us always reason out before accepting anything. So the rationalistic approach is recommended, and also the infinite heart, the loving heart must be there. The combination of intellect and heart, that type of person is required in modern times more, because people are suffering and people are making people suffer on account of the abuse of their intellect, and they are becoming brutal in their ways because of self-interest. So we are the cause of our suffering. So it should not be difficult for us to remove the cause of suffering. The way is to develop our intellectual faculty and develop our heart. That is the way Swami Vivekananda points out to us. So what the world needs today is reasoning intellect and compassionate heart to ensure peace and happiness in the modern world. That is what Swami Vivekananda says, practical Vedanta. So the philosophy of Vivekananda, the profound philosophy of Vivekananda, practical Vedanta, that is what is needed in these modern times. And Swami Vivekananda's teachings are available in the small text as practical Vedanta. It is available in our bookstore. So please go through that small booklet. You will really know many things, how it is possible to practice spirituality in our daily life. Thank you very much. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. May the Lord protect us, may He nourish us, may we not be fruitful and enlightened, may we not hate each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.